Hello. I'd like to read you a story today that I used to read to my friend Jean. She was a 100-year-old woman from Brooklyn who lived in western Massachusetts in a locked Alzheimer's ward, and I was paid to be her companion. We had a really interesting relationship because there was so much of music and literature and religious thought that would make her completely lucid. But then sometimes, for instance, when I read her the story of Hans Brinker and the Silver Skates, for the rest of the night, she kept asking me if certain nurses on the ward were going to win the contest. What were my opinions on that? And it was always so strange. You couldn't predict when she was going to be lucid and when she wouldn't. That's the nature of Alzheimer's. Sometimes she would think we were at a restaurant together because our relationship was so intimate. She figured we must be romantically linked or in the same family. It was always dreamy logic that would happen in the Alzheimer's ward. I went 2 days a week for 2 years and became friends with her. I would always go there, I'd sing for a few hours and hold her hand, or I would read to her, often holding her hand. A few times we went out to pick flowers, but she had to stay in the wheelchair, so we couldn't go far. Just simple things. It was a really good part of my life. So this is one of the books, the stories of Sholom Aleichem, that I had discovered on her shelf, picked up on a whim, because my job there was to just give her what I could of myself that would make her happy and make her remember what it's like to just have a real life. As you know, these locked Alzheimer's wards, they're not always a real life. They're very solitary, sad places in general. Even the best ones can be sad because they're all there for one reason, is because they can't exist without the constant availability of medical care. But for the several hours a week that I was there, and the several hours a week that another woman was there visiting her, and it was interesting, she had such a different relationship with Jean that was more involved in family life, bringing her child to visit Jean and showing her art books and interior design decorative books. And I more concentrated, as I said, on music and literature and sometimes dance. We would either watch dance together, talk about dance, or sometimes I would perform a dance, which would make her laugh until she choked. She had such a fun laugh, where it was a very quiet and gentle laugh, but also incredibly forceful. I cannot imitate her. I'm sorry. Sometimes she would laugh till she cried, though, and it would just make me feel so nice. So anyway, I had found, we read through this whole book of Sholom Aleichem stories twice in the time that I knew her, and we also read other things. And this was just the story that she loved the best. She really laughed so hard at all the stories that have this wonderful bickering, fighting, arguing dialogue. Sholom Aleichem is probably my favorite short story writer out of anyone. He's he's as good as you can be at this stuff. He's so wonderful. He has such a ear for dialogue and such a knowledge of relationships. And he was writing, always a focus on his writing was a love for tradition. You may remember his famous character, Tevye the Milkman from Fiddler on the Roof. That was a Sholom Aleichem creation. He was always writing about tradition, but he was also always writing about justice. And whenever justice and tradition were in opposition, Sholom Aleichem chooses justice, progress. But he was such a traditionalist, with such a love of his language and culture, that he would frequently choose to reconcile the two. There was always a way to reconcile the two. You might remember Tevye's conversations with himself. On the one hand, on the other hand, on the other hand. How many hands does he have? That's a Sholom Aleichem droll kind of humor. As a humorist, I put him up there with P.G. Wodehouse easily. Anyhow, this story is really not so funny. There's humor in it, but it's not for everyone. But this is the story that Jean responded to with sighs and tears and wistful smiles and squeezing my hand, which is something she used to do. She would just squeeze my hand in a kind of vigorous, steady beat to show me enthusiasm. So this story was probably her favorite in the book, even though it's all the bickering stuff that would make her laugh so loud. And I had promised her daughter long ago that I would film this book, this story, just so she would get a taste of what it was like to have me read these stories to her. The only thing you need to know to understand this story, it's all self-explanatory, except that if you don't already know, Passover is one of the major Jewish holidays. It's a very holy day, lots of prayer, an important family meal, and then several days of festival, holiday, Chol Hamoed stuff where you just party and picnic and love one another, and then followed by another wonderful sacred prayer day, and then back to normal life and normal work. And even the hardworking peasants of Sholom Aleichem's time would be able to experience that same flow of day for prayer and these holidays. This story is called A Page from the Song of Songs, and it's part of a small series. In Sholom Aleichem's short stories, he would frequently go back and write another short story with the same characters from a different time. This entire book is full of wonderful Tevye stories, and it's such a progression. I can't tell you how much I love these. I could tell you, but then I'd just do the whole video gushing, and you would get no story. So here, at long last, is your story, A Page from the Song of Songs. Oh, Cheder is the name for the Jewish school, where it was mostly religious instruction. You have to learn all these different sections of the Torah and certain ways to form argumentation and stuff. And then there would be secular education, depending on the quality of the school, the area you lived in, the time, that can increase or decrease. Each village has its own regulations, but everyone has to have the same religious instruction, and that's what mainly this was for, Cheder. And every boy goes to it. Everything else makes sense. Okay. A Page from the Song of Songs by Sholom Aleichem. Boozy is a name. It is a diminutive of Esther Libbe. First Esther Libbe, then Liboozy, then Boozy. She is a year older than I, or maybe 2 years. And together we are not quite 20 years old. Now I ask you, how old am I and how old is she? But that is not important. Instead, let me give you a short sketch of her life. My older brother, Benny, lived in a village where he owned a mill. He was a wonder at shooting, riding, and swimming. One summer day, while bathing in the river, he drowned. Thus the old adage that the best swimmers drown was borne out. He left the mill, 2 horses, a young widow, and a child. The mill was abandoned, the horses were sold, the widow remarried and moved to some distant place, and the child was brought to us. That child was Boozy. That my father should love Boozy as his own is easy to understand, and that my mother should watch over her like an only daughter is natural. In her they found a comfort for their great sorrow. But that has nothing to do with me. Then why is it that when I come from Cheder and find Boozy not at home, my food is flat and tasteless? And why is it that when Boozy comes in, the darkest corners are suddenly lit up? And why is it that when Boozy speaks to me, I drop my eyes? And when Boozy laughs at me, I weep? And when Boozy... All through the winter, I had been looking forward to the Passover holidays. Then I would be free from Cheder, free to play with Boozy, free to run outdoors with her. We would run down the hill to the river's edge where I could show her how the ducklings learned to swim. When I try to tell her about it, she only laughs at me. Boozy doesn't believe a thing I tell her. She doesn't believe that I can climb up to the top of the highest tree if only I wanted to. She doesn't believe that I can shoot if I only had a gun to shoot with. She never says she doesn't believe, she only laughs at me. And I hate nothing more than to be laughed at. But when Passover comes, the beautiful, free days of Passover, when we can run outdoors away from the watchful eyes of my parents, then I will show her such wonders that they will take her breath away. The wonderful time, the most joyous time of the year has come. Boozy and I are dressed in our holiday clothes. Everything we have on twinkles and shines and crackles. I look at Boozy, and I am reminded of the Song of Songs, which I studied before Passover with my rabbi. Verse after verse it comes back to me. Behold, thou art fair, my beloved, thou art fair. Thy eyes are as doves, thy hair is a flock of goats that comes down from Mount Gilead. Thy teeth are like a flock of white lambs that come up from the river. All are alike, the same mother bore them. Thy lips are like a thread of scarlet. Thy speech is full of sweetness. Why is it that when you look at Boozy, you are reminded of the Song of Songs? Why is it that when you study the Song of Songs, Boozy comes into your thoughts? We are ready to go. I can hardly stand still. My pockets are full of nuts. My mother gave us all we wanted. She filled our pockets and told us we could play with them to our heart's content, but she made us promise not to crack any before Passover. Are you ready? Says Boozy. I jump for the door. Away we go. The nuts make a drumming sound. They rattle as we run. At first we are dazzled by the brilliance outside. The sun is high up already. It is looking down on the other side of town. The air is free and fresh, soft and clear. Here and there on the hill beyond the synagogue, there sprouts the first grass of spring, tender, quivering, green. With a scream and a flutter of wings and a straight line of swallows flies over our heads, and again, I'm reminded of the Song of Songs. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the songbirds has come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. I feel strangely light. It seems to me that I have wings. Any minute now I will rise into the air and fly. From the town, strange sounds arise. A roaring, a boiling, a seething. It is the day before Passover, a rare and wonderful day. In one instant, the world is transformed. Our yard is a king's court. Our house is a palace. I am a prince, and Boozy is a princess. The logs of wood piled about our door are the cedars and cypresses that are mentioned in the Song of Songs. The cat that lies near the door warming herself in the sun is a roe, or a young hart that is mentioned in the Song of Songs. The women and the girls who are working outdoors, washing and cleaning and getting ready for the Passover, are the daughters of Jerusalem, mentioned in the Song of Songs. Everything is from the Song of Songs. I walk with my hands in my pockets, and the nuts rattle. Boozy follows me step by step. I cannot walk slowly. I am treading on air. I want to fly, to swoop, to soar like an eagle. I start running, and Boozy runs after me. I leap onto the pile of logs and jump from one log to another. Boozy jumps after me. I jump up, she jumps up. I jump down, she jumps down. Who will get tired first? I guessed it. How long will you keep it up? Asks Boozy, all out of breath. And I answer her in the words of the Song of Songs. Till the morning breeze come and the shadows flee away. There, you are tired and I am not. I feel proud that Boozy cannot keep up with me. I gloat over her, and at the same time I am sorry for her. My heart aches for her, because I imagine she is unhappy. That is Boozy, full of gaiety one moment, and the next she is hiding in a corner, quietly weeping. At times like these, nothing helps. No matter how much my mother tries to comfort her, how much my father caresses her, she continues to cry. For whom does she cry? For her father, who died when she was a baby? For her mother, who married and went off without as much as a goodbye? Ah, that mother of hers. When you mention her mother, her face turns fiery red as though she were ashamed of her. She never says an unkind word about her, but she looks unhappy. I cannot bear to see Boozy looking so wretched. I sit near her on the logs and try to distract her thoughts. Rolling a few nuts about, I start. Guess what I could do if I wanted to? What could you do? If I wanted to, all your nuts would be mine. Would you win them away from me? No, we wouldn't even start playing. Well then, would you take them away from me? No, they would come to me by themselves. She raises her eyes to me. Her blue eyes straight out of the Song of Songs. I say, you think I am joking. Well, I know a certain language. I know some magic words. She opens her eyes wider. I explain, feeling grown and important, all puffed up with pride. We boys know a lot of things. There is a boy in Cheder, Shaika, who is blind in one eye. He knows everything. He even knows Kabbalah. Do you know what Kabbalah is? No, how should I know? I'm suddenly lifted to the seventh heaven because I can give her a lesson in Kabbalah. Kabbalah, silly, is a useful thing. By means of Kabbalah, I can make myself invisible. With Kabbalah, I can draw wine from a stone and gold from a well. With the help of Kabbalah, you and I, just as we are sitting here, could rise to the clouds and above the clouds, to fly up to the clouds with Boozy, and above the clouds, to fly away with her, far, far off over the ocean. That has been one of my fondest dreams. There, beyond the ocean, begins the land of the dwarfs, who are descended from King David's time. These dwarfs are kindly little people who live on sweets and almond milk, play all day long on little flutes and dance in a ring, are afraid of nothing and are kind to strangers. When someone arrives from our world, they give him food and drink and shower him with costly garments and gold and silver ornaments. And before he leaves, they fill his pockets with diamonds and jewels, which lie about in their streets as trash does in ours. Really? Like trash in the streets? Asked Boozy, wonderingly, when I once told her about the dwarfs. Don't you believe it? Do you? Why shouldn't I? Where did you hear about it? In Cheder, of course. Oh, in Cheder. Lower and lower sinks the sun, painting the sky a fiery gold. The gold is reflected in Boozy's eyes. They swim in molten gold. I want very badly to impress Boozy with Shaika's ability and with the wonders I can perform by means of Kabbalah. But Boozy won't be impressed. Instead, she laughs at me. She looks at me with her mouth half open and all her pearly teeth showing and laughs. Annoyed, I ask, don't you believe me? Boozy laughs again. You think I am boasting, that I am making up lies. Boozy laughs harder. I have to repay her for this. I know how to. The trouble with you is that you don't know what Kabbalah is. If you knew, you wouldn't laugh. By means of Kabbalah, if I wanted to, I could bring your mother down here. Yes, I can. And if you begged me very hard, I could bring her tonight, riding on a broomstick. At once she stops laughing. A cloud crosses her lovely bright face, and it seems to me that the sun has suddenly disappeared and the day is done. I have gone too far. I have wounded her tenderest feelings. I am sorry I had ever started this. How can I make up to her now? I move closer to her. She turns away from me. I want to take her hand and speak to her with the words of the Song of Songs. Return, return, O Shulamite. Turn back to me, Boozy. Suddenly, a voice calls out, Shimek, Shimek. Shimek, that's me. My mother is calling me to go to the synagogue with my father. To go with father to the synagogue on the eve of Passover is one of the pleasures of life. Just to be dressed in perfectly new clothes from head to foot and to show off before one's friends. And the services, the first evening prayer, The first benediction of the holiday season? What delights the Lord has provided for his Jewish children. Shimek, Shimek! My mother is in a hurry. I am coming right away. I just have to tell Boozy something. Just one little thing. I tell her just one thing. That what I told her was not true. To make other people fly by means of Kabbalah is impossible. But I myself, I can fly. And I will show her right after the holidays. I will make my first attempt then. I will rise up here from these very logs where we are now sitting. And in one moment I will be above the clouds. From there I will turn to the right. There, see? Where everything ends and the frozen sea begins. Boozy listens, absorbed in my story. The sun, about to sink, sends its last rays to kiss the earth. What, asks Boozy, do you mean by the frozen sea? Don't you know what the frozen sea is? That's far in the north. The water is as thick as jelly and as salty as brine. Ships cannot go there, and people who are caught in it never return. Boozy looks at me wide-eyed. Then why are you going there? Am I going to touch the sea, you silly thing? I'll fly high up over it, like an eagle, and in a few minutes I shall be on dry land. That is where the 12 high mountains begin, that belch fire and smoke. I shall stop on the tip of the 12th mountain, and walk from there for 7 miles, till I come to a thick forest. I will cross several forests, till I come to a small lake. I shall swim across the lake and count 7 times 7. Out of the ground will spring a dwarf with a long white beard. He will say to me, "What is your wish?" And I will say to him, "Lead me to the queen's daughter." "Which queen's daughter?" asks Boozy, startled. The queen's daughter, I explain, is the beautiful princess who was snatched away from under the wedding canopy, bewitched and carried far, far away and locked up in a crystal palace for 7 years. What is she to you? What do you mean, what is she to me? I have to set her free, don't I? You have to set her free? Who then? You don't have to fly so far, believe me. You don't have to fly so far, says Boozy and takes my hand. Her small, white hand is cold. I look into her eyes and see in them the last faint reflection of the gold that is draining from the sky. Slowly the day is going. The first beautiful day of spring is passing away. Like a spent candle, the sun goes down. The noises that we heard all day are dying too. There is hardly a person to be seen in the street. From the windows of the houses, there wink the flames of candles lit for Passover Eve. A strange, holy stillness surrounds us, and Boozy and I feel ourselves slowly merging with this stillness. Shimek! Shimek! This is the 3rd time my mother has called me, as if I didn't know myself that I had to go to the synagogue. I'll stay only another minute, not more than a minute. But Boozy hears her too, pulls her hand out of mine, jumps to her feet, and begins to push me. Shimek, your mother is calling you. You'd better go. It's late. Go. I am getting ready to go. The day is done. The sun has been snuffed out. All the gold has turned to blood. A cool breeze has sprung up. Boozy keeps pushing me towards the house. I throw a last quick look at her. Her face has changed, and it has a different, an unearthly beauty in the twilight. The thought of the bewitched princess flits through my head, but Boozy won't allow those thoughts. She keeps pushing me ahead. I start slowly to go, and I look back just once at the bewitched princess who has now completely merged with the weird Passover twilight, and I stand rooted in one spot. But she waves her hand at me, bidding me to go quickly. And it seems to me that I hear her speaking in the words of the Song of Songs. Make haste, my beloved, be thou like a gazelle, or a young hart upon the mountain of spices. Thank you. Bye.